because without question, like, people like Neville, Joseph Murphy, the guy who wrote The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, H. Emily Cady, who's one of my favorite teachers. She was involved with the Unity Church like 100 years ago. You read their stuff and you're like, it's unbelievable. It's spectacular, and it's very altruistic. And it's also saying, if we really are all imagination, or if imagination is far more dominant, at least, than what we give it credit for, far more dominant than, like, let's say our willpower is. If that's true, then we have to take a lot more responsibility for what we are thinking, So, I talk about the joy of not thinking, but also I'm into what we actually are thinking, what we are imagining. And that, again, is kind of navigating these muddy waters and figuring out where to go. And the law of attraction definitely, on a pragmatic level, helps you do that. If you take the advice of the older great teachers, but a lot of people don't, and even Neville, who I love, I just posted a couple of videos on this. Actually, it's interesting to see how much more popular he's gotten in like the last 3 or 4 years on YouTube. And there's a lot of people talking about his advice in a good way, but there's far, far, far more people discussing it in this very superficial yet cultish way that, in my opinion, misses the point of what these great teachers were getting at.
Yeah. What do you mean by superficial and cultish way?
Well, a lot of it still is like, I'm going to manifest that, that specific person in 3 weeks, or, I manifested $100,000 in 2 weeks, or what have you. All that's fine. Again, that's all well and good. It's just that there's this, Neville was a very open and far-reaching teacher, and he was a very spiritual person. And I feel like people like to use some of his catchphrases, like, you're all imagination, and then they become dogmatic about it. And I guess that's really my criticism, is that it's this very dogmatic approach that is just not, I don't think, is helpful for most people to apply than this more loving, altruistic approach, where you learn about yourself and you also inevitably improve the lives of others by improving yourself. And improving yourself, don't get me wrong, can be, getting that better house, getting that better job, meeting that perfect person. It's just, there's an obsession about these specific secret, like, get this certain thing quickly, that kind of devalues the profundity of Neville's advice, or somebody like that.
Yeah, well said indeed. And like I often say, I believe in manifesting things in life. And I think, like you, our subconscious, our imagination can move mountains. I mean, the Hermetic tradition that the universe is within us. We have the power to change reality, literally. But the question is, who's getting what they want? Because if my ego gets what it wants more, and it's not going to be satisfied. If something deeper within me gets what it wants, then it shares, it teaches, it makes sure that everybody's taken care of. Would you agree with that, Tim?
Absolutely. Yeah. I know when you had Mitch on, I saw you guys talking a little bit about the ego and how he doesn't necessarily view the ego in the same way as most people. And I kind of agree with that as well. But the way we usually look at ego, without question, it's my criticism of a lot of the law of attraction scene, the secret scene that's going on today, is that it does clearly seem ego driven. While if we just go a little bit deeper, which we can easily do just by being patient and getting into these teachings, we inevitably find out about ourselves. And by finding out about ourselves on a deeper level, a spiritual level, if you want to use that language, we change stuff for everybody. And that just is like a fluid, natural thing. And it's so cool, and the pragmatic nature of these new thought and law of attraction teachings is really there to the benefit of everybody. So we should not be too egotistical about how we use them. And people are. I mean, it is what it is, but it's, we all have those problems too. We think, oh, I'm going to manifest a certain thing and it's going to help me. And it's rarely that easy. My book, The Law of Attraction Simplified, talks a lot about how manifesting something specific that you want externally is usually not as easy as most people make it seem it is. Well, when you read about this stuff initially or watch The Secret, you say, oh, this is going to be easy. And you quickly realize it's not easy to get something you really want. And the primary reason for that is because we don't feel good while we're trying to get that thing. A lot of the time, it doesn't seem realistic to get it. And so we get stressed out that it's not going to happen. And we have to kind of flip things on their head a lot of the time, I think, and really focus on feeling good more often. And then those things we really want in our life, if we feel good more often and feel more deserving of them, they tend to come in, and at least come in on an emotional level, where, for instance, if somebody's looking to meet the love of their life, right, and they're finding it very hard to do so, if they start working on themselves, I'm not saying that they're going to meet the love of their life within the next half year, but if they start working on themselves, at least they're going to start building better relationships with other people. And then from doing that, gradually, chances are they will connect with somebody who they, have a deep romantic connection with, or what have you. But it's not as glamorous as saying, you do this one technique and you're gonna meet the love of your life in 3 weeks, And listen, that can work. Don't get me wrong. It usually doesn't. That's what it comes down to. I think that the more patient we can be with these law of attraction principles, usually the more beneficial they can be for everybody, as you said. So.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. It has to come from a deeper place. What's the saying? God, I forget who said it, but he said, God answers prayers and spares the rest. In other words, it's the old monkey paw, be careful what you ask for and all that. Because, you may think you want this girl really fast, but then it could fall. It all goes to shit later on, if you would. Or you want your luxury car, and then you realize how expensive it is to make things like that. You know what I mean? It's
absolutely
from a deeper place.
That's the whole thing, is that, do you really want it? And that's like lottery winners. You always hear about that. People win the lottery, and then a significant percentage of people lose the money or are unhappy after they win the lottery. And you have to, I guess you could say, calibrate to that level that you seemingly want. And what we often find is when we get quiet and meditative with ourselves, we realize, first of all, oh, I've actually got it pretty good right now. At least a lot of us do, and that's not to slight people who feel like they don't, but to realize that what you have in the present moment is usually okay. And then if we get honest with ourselves and really contemplate it, we might realize that what we initially think we want is not what we want, because when we're clear with what we want, that's a big part of this process. If you're clear with what you want, you almost inevitably you're going for it, right? And almost inevitably, if you continually think it's possible for it to come into your life, at least on this emotional, energetic level, it's going to start to come. And people deny that of themselves. They say, oh, I want this new job, but it seems out of my reach or out of my league. And if they just didn't say that and just acknowledge they wanted the job and be like, you know what, I'm going to get this. I'm going to figure out a way to reach it. And when all that doubt creeps in, if they just were like, I still know I really want this, and just kept on focusing on getting it, something like that job would probably show up in their life eventually. Again, it might not be in 2 months. It might take 2 years. It might take 5 years, but it would be probably a path worth taking, as opposed to that path of, oh, I'm not good enough. That's out of my league. In the law of attraction, they like to say, nothing's out of your league. Anything is possible. And I always think that's a little bit silly too. Cause I like giving the flying example, people dream of flying in their dreams all the time, but when do you ever see somebody actually flying, but that said, the power of our imagination is incredible. And it's something that we can definitely harness and utilize, more effectively than we do. Even if we're good at harnessing our imagination, we can get better and better at it, as Emile Coué said. So.